good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica Alfisi, and I am a certified business performance advisor with Insperity. I'm honored today to be speaking to some of the leading HR professionals in the medical pharma industries. Today, we will be discussing the considerations and strategies for making your hiring decisions and recruiting decisions for your company so that you can strengthen and scale successfully. I'd like to introduce our panelists today. We have Dianne Whitfield, Chief HR Officer at Tarsus Pharmaceuticals. We have Cindy Navarrette, Director of Talent at Tarsus Pharmaceuticals. Amy Fox, she's VP of Human Resources at Halozyme. So without any further ado, we're going to jump in and roll up our sleeves a little bit and we'll start asking some questions and see if we can get some best practice recommendations from our experts here. My first question, Dianne, it's for you. When in the life cycle of the company did you establish a recruiting or talent function?
That's a great question, Monica. So a little bit about Tarsus. We're a late-stage biopharmaceutical late-stage clinical organization in Irvine, California. We're not yet commercial. We're developing two investigational drug products. And we currently have 40 employees here in Irvine, but I was employee number 20, the first human resources talent to join the organization, which candidly is oftentimes for companies earlier in the life cycle to bring on a full-time HR leader. And the reason is as we look to the growth of our organization, we are scaling for growth. And so for us, it was a little bit earlier than many companies, but part of it was really the planning and strategy around where are we going to be in 2 to 3 years and how will we get there, and ensuring that we've got the right infrastructure built. And so I joined in January of this year, and then Cindy on my team joined shortly thereafter, because when you look to scale for growth and understand the talent you need to bring on board, turn you've got the right leadership to help build that strategy and recruit that talent becomes really important. So that's where Cindy's played a key role in helping, double the size of our organization just this year alone so far. So. I think we might have lost Monica.
Oh no, did we lose her?
I think we did. Maybe we should start asking each other questions.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and pull them up, and while we wait for her to rejoin, just hold on a minute.
Well, and maybe what I'll do is pivot that question to Amy, because Halozyme's in a much different life cycle in terms of where it is. You do have a product that is commercial, and so how do you approach it being in a different place?
No, I think, but it's the same. I agree with you, Dianne. It's really kind of where you want to go, and really kind of looking at it strategically. So really putting that workforce plan into place and looking at kind of what the business imperatives are, and then what do we need from a talent perspective to stand that up, whether we're going to buy that talent through direct hires or we're going to go through some contingent resources. That's really what you want to do. And you can do that whether you have 5 employees or we have about 150. Like Dianne said, Halozyme is we're a commercial organization. We have a drug delivery technology called ENHANCE, and we partner with other pharmaceutical companies to help get people out of infusion centers and having subcutaneous injections. So very different in terms of our life stage, but I think the recruiting practices are the same. And we also have, looking at it's just very much the same, and we have the same challenges as everybody does in this. This is probably the toughest market that I've been in my life sciences career. So really having to put our, be creative thinkers in terms of how we attract that great talent.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Amy, because regardless of where you're at in size or how you're trying to hire, just the talent macro environment in general has changed so much. And I think COVID is one aspect of it, but also just the way, people are changing jobs and the opportunities that are out there as well. So it's definitely a unique time hiring in life sciences right now.
No, and I think when you look at just all of the capital that's gone into the life sciences market and how many companies have IPO'd in the last year or so, and just all the funding that's been in there, so many people are able to get their clinical trials off the ground and do all that. So just the market is really stressed. We're seeing, I was just reading something the other day where it was talking about the need in CMC research, reg affairs, all of those positions, and are all just really high in demand positions. And when you're early stage, you're using some of those. So.
Okay, team, I am back. Just sorry for the technical difficulties, but I just got bumped off for some reason.
No problem. I have a question while Monica's getting settled in. More often than not, we have, 30 companies, startups in the life science space. When they're relocating to Orange County, they have a concern in regards to talent, because there is a rumor that all the talent in life science is in San Diego, right, versus Orange County. And what are your thoughts about that? I mean, Dianne, Amy, or Cindy, working in this space, like what is your reaction, or when somebody says that to you?
Well, I can start, and I know, Amy, you're in, I think, San Diego too, right? So you probably have a different take on things, but I think relocation is always top of mind. It's always difficult because at certain levels, people have settled, sometimes out of state, sometimes in New Jersey, where lots of pharma tends to be, or up in the Bay Area. But here in Orange County, we have a strong presence, I think, in pharmaceuticals, specifically in eye care. We've got some big players here. And so I think also specifically with San Diego folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people end up commuting anyway, right? Depending on where you are. So I strongly believe that if people are living in North County, San Diego, which is where my brother lives, so I know that drive, you're going to kind of commute no matter what, right? So I think we often just encourage people just to commute a little bit north versus south. So we do pull from San Diego. There is a lot of small kind of biotech there, a lot of startups as well. So I think when you specialize in something, people recognize they have to go where the jobs are. And sometimes that's just not going to be in their back door. So I think what's essential here is just providing that support and assistance, whether it be through area tours or a relocation company to partner with, just ensuring that you're providing a nice package, a robust package that does include relocation support.
No, I think that's true. And I actually commuted from San Diego to Orange County for a job, and was not a problem. We have a lot of people that are commuting the other way down to our office in San Diego. I think one of the great things about the last year or so and all the remote work is it's really opened up the talent market, so we can cast a much wider net in terms of recruiting people outside of the San Diego area, which is good because San Diego does have a lot of talent, but we also have a lot of companies that are all we're all competing for the same people. So to be able to attract people from outside of San Diego has been a real help for us in terms of filling our roles. And you have to think of things a little differently then, because it's like, how do you create that social connection and build that culture when not everyone's on site? But I think it's just a great way to do it. And you don't have to then pay the big reload packages. Also, a small company, we've always done reload through cash sign-ons versus having a full relocation package that you see at bigger pharma. So that's one of the ways that we've been able to be competitive with reload as well as a smaller company, where you don't have those big relocation resources to draw from.
Amy, quick question for you. How, when you're putting these packages together, relocating potential new hires, is there any other incentives that you build into the package? For example, mass transit, if they want to take the train to work, or the toll road, is there any other incentives that you build into that package for them when you're recruiting?
You can certainly do that. We usually just do it with in terms of if we're looking at a cash sign on to kind of take those things into consideration. But one of the things in terms of the whole package, that's what we really look at is being competitive in the market. So we rely on market data from Radford, Aon Radford, and we pull that specific for our peer group that we're working in. So similar sized companies and the San Diego market. And we'll look at that in terms of competitive base, what our bonus target is, and then our long-term incentives through we're able to provide equity to our people. So that's really where the bulk of our package is in terms of being attractive. And then we also just really look at being very compelling in terms of what our value proposition is and what people just love about working at Halo and those great the great things, whether it's learning and development opportunities, the culture, the opportunity to make an impact and do meaningful work. Those are really the things that do it. So we haven't had to do, long answer to get to, we haven't really done a lot of perks in terms of covering tolls or anything like that. We try to make it up in terms of competitive compensation.
Great.
I think one thing I'll just add to that, I think every candidate is different. So it's really just understanding your candidates and what their needs are. And some folks may not need a full package. They may need just, cash to get them from there to here. So, whether it's just understanding, I think, your candidates and what's really important to them. And to Amy's point, really understanding your value proposition as a company and really what's in it for the candidates, right? Understanding how to communicate that based on what's important to them.
Mm-hmm. And being aware of how the market is changing and candidate needs are changing as well. So just even within the last year, as Amy mentioned, now companies can provide the flexibility to work remote. We have a model of how that can work effectively. So that can create a lot of flexibility for smaller companies who are looking to bring in talent and may not be able to find that in the local market. Is if you're willing to be a little bit flexible, it does require some additional thought in terms of how you're going to engage them, as Amy mentioned, but you can, it's another way to look at talent. And so just really thinking outside of the box from that perspective as well.
Great, Dianne. I know one question that comes up in most cases, especially recently for me when I'm interviewing potential new clients, is that hybrid work environment. Mm-hmm. So that, along with the culture, right? A big mm-hmm. part of the company's success is how involved or how married the employee is to the mission statement, the culture of the organization. So how do you work on keeping that intact?
Yeah, they're so important. And I mean, and it's not a one and done initiative, right? It's not about just defining it. It's, for me, culture is something that you're cultivating on a daily basis. So it starts with first defining what sort of culture you want to be and being really thoughtful about that. For us at Tarsus, it's anchored in our mission. So we tied it to our mission. Our focus is on really looking and helping patients with unmet needs. So all of our therapeutics are focused in areas of unmet needs, and we want to make sure that that patient centricity is first. And so our culture values are about commitment, empowerment, and teamwork. And they really kind of help define to someone maybe we're trying to recruit who we're about, but then beyond that, we have to really show it in the work that we're doing every day. So my job has been being very intentional about how do we build this into our programs and our processes? How do we ensure that on a daily basis, we're demonstrating those values and we really speak to it? And so we spend a lot of time, Cindy can attest, my team is fully focused on all initiatives that drive our culture and making sure that it is like front and center for what we're doing on a regular basis. And as we're scaling, that we're finding talent who connects to it and understands what that means and has that same value set, and especially at a leadership level can continue to drive that for our organization. With respect to hybrid work, I mean, that's a whole new sort of concept that's becoming so popular. And I think every company defines it slightly different. And in a lot of ways, we're still figuring it out. with COVID still front and center in so many ways, we don't really have a sense of what normal is. So we're still working in an abnormal environment. And so I think the biggest thing is being flexible, being adaptive, understanding that things are continuing to change. And for me, what I always put first is we're going to take care of our employees first, that we can't accomplish what we need to do if we don't make sure our employees are taken care of. So similar to culture, put that front and center, figure out what employees need, and then work around that in a way that's going to benefit and help the business achieve its objectives. But you have to make sure that employees need, those are being met, and that's something that you're considering as you think about the way that work is going to get done.
No, and when I think about it, I mean, I just think the past year or so has really taught us about resilience and agility. And those are great capabilities that, help organizations be successful. And we really try to push that through our culture and really reinforce it and have, just like you said, Dianne, just be really, champion that from our CEO all the way down to, our receptionists. We love those attributes, and they're what help us to really kind of drive performance and engagement in our organization. So we talk about those in the recruitment process and have that, but we're consistent in terms of our candidate experience as well as our employee experience, so that we can really get people that are resilient, agile, innovative, all of those kind of things that are so important to our business success.
All great stuff. Thank you for sharing that, Amy and Dianne. A question that I have is how, talking about the talent pool culture, the tangible, results that come from that, from leadership all the way down to the employees with that first experience through onboarding, what are the tangible results that you see from that with regards to retention, employee retention? And what I mean by that is when you onboard them and they have this great experience coming on board, how does that impact the tenure or the longevity of this employee and how they stay, especially when you combine the culture alignment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so for Tarsus, we are very new and we're hiring at a rapid pace, but we don't have a ton of tenured employees. But fortunately, we're going through a process of, we just launched our first employee engagement survey company-wide. So that will give us some great data points to really understand where engagement levels are and what are the areas of focus. But my past experience at companies has been when you do really focus on those things, you do see the output long-term. So you see it demonstrated through things like engagement levels and tracking turnover trends. And so when you're doing things the right way, you see a healthier number. And especially, last year with a year of COVID where people were really struggling, as Amy mentioned, really fostering and honing in on characteristics like resiliency and agility. Those who were able to weather through it, you saw their engagement levels, even through difficult times, continue to stay strong. But I think it's also acknowledging that it's been a really tough last 18 months. And so regardless of what you're doing for employees, there's some level, I think, of burnout at all levels. Working, whether it's that you've been working from home for too long and you just miss that social interaction, or you've been trying to balance homeschooling with working from home, or you're just in a job role like HR that has to do a lot more through a pandemic. Burnout's real. And so recognizing that for employees is really important. So we've done some things like creating recharge days, which is where the entire company shuts down for the day so that employees can recharge together. And I know Amy at Halozyme, you did a full week, which is really inspiring. That we looked at that, thought that's really cool and something that we would want to emulate as well. So I'll let you kind of speak to the impact of that.
No, thanks, Dianne. And it's a really good question. That was great. We shut down for a week at the end of June. We called it our Inspire Week. And we really kind of told people we wanted to do it in a way the same as you, so that everybody was powered down, and people could really have an opportunity to connect with stuff that they love, that's inspiring, whether it's family or going on a walk or reading a book or going somewhere. And then people came back and shared those experiences, which was really, really cool. And when I think about, okay, how do we translate a great onboarding experience, that employee experience, into retention? For me, what it is when I think about employee engagement and high performance, the things that stand out to me that are really important is establishing trust, providing people the opportunity to do that meaningful work and have an impact. And then that connection with their people manager in terms of, take time to get to know me and focus on my development. And regardless of what size the organization is, you can have those development pathways. They may not be the formal pathways, but you have those opportunities to get experience, to gain experiences. And so for me, it's delivering on that value proposition over and over again, so that people know that, hey, what I learned about during the recruitment process about what's great about Halozyme's delivering on that for me. And sometimes we don't get it right, and I think we do engagement surveys as well. We just launched a new one through a platform where we'll be able to do them more frequently than we have in the past. But we've looked at those, and in prior years, there were areas of opportunity from us in terms of having people be able to give constructive feedback and deliver that. And then also some focus on development that we've put into place as a result. And then we can go back and tell people, hey, we did what we said we were going to do, and we can make that better. So I think those, in terms of retention, I think that's what's really, really important to us.
It's wonderful. This question, Cindy, quick question for you with regards to recruiting and looking for talent. I mean, these are all wonderful resources that Amy and Dianne are talking about. What are some of the drivers when you're recruiting, and especially if you're recruiting from a larger organization that help you bring more folks to the startup environment, right? They may not think that the resources are there, but my goodness, between Dianne and Amy, these climate surveys that they're giving and these Inspire weeks, I mean, they're really, really leaning in with their best foot forward. What are people looking for when you're transitioning them over from a larger organization, maybe a Fortune 500 company, onto your platform?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think nowadays candidates want it all. It's a candidate market out there. It's very tight and has been for a while. COVID made it even more challenging because there is a lot of flexibility, right? Working remote. So it doesn't necessarily mean that people have to move all the time for great opportunities. So that does make it even more challenging for employers. So we have to do a really fantastic job sharing with candidates our story. And so when we think about maybe plucking some folks from big pharma or other bigger companies unlike ours, it's about sharing what makes us special and what makes us different. So I think there's, kind of the bread and water of like what I like to say candidates expect nowadays: competitive salaries, bonuses, stock. That's just a given. So we don't really hone in on that, even though we do really offer some pretty cool things. But we have to just, I try to mention why I joined personally, having never worked at a startup before. I try to share my story. And a lot of times that does resonate with candidates, especially that have come from similar companies of different sizes. I also share our leadership and, the value that they're providing, the experience and depth of experience that they're bringing, and why they chose to come. That also has helped resonate. And we definitely put our story out there on social media. So I am out there all the time, whether it's sharing something kind of fun and lighthearted or something very meaningful that the company is in the midst of doing. Candidates just want to know how their experience is going to be better. And it's not just always about title and money. It's about the culture and if they're going to be happy there long term. So it's really understanding kind of what motivates candidates and what's important to them, and then sharing that story. So specifically what I found with Tarsus is that it's very important to spend a lot of time building the relationship with the candidates. We move at a place that's at a pace that's quick, but we also want to be able to build that relationship over time because they do need to know more about it. So it's giving them as much information as possible in the very beginning, so they understand that, yeah, we might be small, but we definitely have some really great things happening.
Wonderful.
And I think I just think that's great. I think working in a startup is one of my favorite environments to work on. I'm born to build, so I love to build things from the ground up. And I think a lot of people, especially coming from big companies, it's like, well, what if you have the opportunity to do something differently? What would you do? And people really get to make that kind of impact in a startup environment that you don't necessarily in a larger organization where things are more siloed. You also just have a lot of face-to-face interaction with the founders and the leadership of the organization that in a larger organization is many layers up. And that is really, really cool and very interesting to people. People love having that connection with leadership, and it's just a great selling point a lot of times.
I would agree. I mean, I think just having that interaction with leadership, and especially at the executive level, people having the opportunity to meet with Dianne, our CHRO, our CEO participates in interviews sometimes. And I think when candidates hear that, they're very surprised and impressed and look forward to that conversation. And he does as well. So I think to Amy's point, it's essential to be able to explain kind of the involvement that the leadership has.
I think there's pride in knowing when you're, like Dianne mentioned, employee number 20, and the company grows and becomes this big, publicly traded or just massive company, and knowing that you were part of that first round of hires or second round, which is impressive. Does a conversation ever come up about career pathing? I know that sometimes some people will leave larger organizations, like Amy alluded to. They're builders, right? They like to build things from the ground up. They're okay with maybe wearing multiple hats in that startup ecosystem. So does career pathing ever come in, or growth opportunities within the organization ever come to play, Cindy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a conversation that we have in the very, very beginning. I often ask a question as far as, what does that next job description look like for you? If you could write it for yourself, what's important? When you think about past experiences, what are some things that you really want? And a lot of times that is stability. We've heard that a lot since the recession. That still comes up. But it's also development. And what does development look like at Tarsus? So, I can have Dianne speak to that more as far as some of the programs that we are looking to implement, but that's definitely top of mind when we think about internal employee engagement. So Dianne, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say just even from the starting point of recruitment that, being at a smaller company, a startup organization is a huge value proposition for someone who's looking to grow their career, because they may be ready for that next level, but there's not an opportunity at a larger organization just because of the way that they have a very structured environment in terms of who moves up and people who have been there, for a while. And in a startup environment, you get to touch many things, right? So you can move outside of your scope and really both broaden, but also get greater depth in your experience. And so I've personally found being in startup environments has been career acceleration for me, that I've been able to grow very quickly because you get to do so many more things. And so I think that's an important part of the conversation, just even as we're talking to candidates and making sure that they understand the opportunity that can be afforded to them in the startup environment. And then with a company like Tarsus, where we're in huge growth mode, the company's only going to continue to grow, and that provides opportunities for talent to grow with it, right? So you may start as a leader leading maybe one team member and doing a lot yourself, but within 12 to 24 months, we'll have huge teams that they may be managing. And so there's opportunity there as well. And then in terms of career development, that's top of mind for, mostly newer generations entering the workforce. That's something that's always what they're looking to do and looking for in employers. But the best career development most often happens experientially, on the job experiences where you're able to take on a new project, take on a new task, get to build. And so again, that's where a startup environment can really create that and foster that type of growth. It's a little bit more organic in some ways, and it also has to be to some extent employee driven, that we want employees to really own what's important for them and have those conversations with their leader. And then we have flexibility to really make sure that it is tailored to what their needs are, and you have greater creativity in terms of what that might look like. So it doesn't necessarily need to be structured in order for it to be successful and rich and enhancing in that regard. So those are some of my thoughts around how you can really develop. But I think it always starts from, having that conversation as they're thinking about the opportunity and making sure they really understand what it could be initially and also longer term as well.
And I think that's one of the things, because even at Halozyme, we're small, so we don't have big formal learning and development programs that you would in a large organization. But I think and we do a lot of experiential development as well. But the other thing we do is we really equip our managers to be able to have those conversations and connect the dots so people understand, oh, I am getting this great experience and I am getting the opportunity and I'm put on this special project and those kinds of things. And we really try to spend a lot of time on that. And it's a big draw for our in terms of recruitment and retention for us, because people see that continued development and are excited about it.
I know from experience and working with some folks that are, in that space and they're constantly being recruited. That's one thing that they're looking for is development, right? They love that startup ecosystem. They love that there's so much growth and the development that comes with it not being lost. So I think that's a really big value proposition for startups that are in this accelerated growth mode. So absolutely. One thing that does come up, and it comes up often, is aside from development, is equity and compensation. How do you handle that? I do meet up with others, bootstrap startups, and they have a lot of questions around equity and how do they distribute that? How have you been able, Amy, to structure that if you do offer compensation and equity?
So at Halozyme, we have equity, as we are fortunate that we're able to give equity all the way down through all of our levels, which is great. One of the things that we really spend a lot of time doing, and it's even more important now, I'm actually just going through it, is doing a competitive assessment and buying that market data so that we understand and we can position our compensation so that we're at market or leading market if that's the position that we want to take. But that having that data and knowing what is out there really helps us to come up with that package. And we have a formula that we use in terms of what the ratio between equity and cash compensation is that we use, and we consistently have that throughout our organization. So we look at that, but it's also philosophically, we want our employees to have skin in the game. So we want to, if the company succeeds and we're creating that long-term value for our shareholders, we want our employees to be shareholders and to have that value as well. So philosophically, that's something that's important to us.
Dianne, any you want to add anything to that on your
Yeah,
end?
we have a very similar approach to Amy and Halozyme. We do benchmarking. Amy mentioned Anne Radford, and that is a really great resource for small businesses. That really is a niche in terms of making sure you've got relevant benchmark data that's applicable to your size and scope of an organization. So really using that as a framework to make sure that what you're offering is competitive, and then creating that structure. And I think what's really important is the structure does also help communicate your philosophy to employees and understand where they're at. and leveraging, similar to Halozyme, every single employee in the organization is a shareholder. So really leveraging stock at all levels. That's something that a lot of big companies don't do because of the size of their organization. They're just not able to do that. And so that's something that's important for us. We do want employees to all feel like they have an opportunity to create value for our company long-term, and that they'll be able to benefit from that. And so we really focus on that as a practice in ensuring that we have really competitive compensation. And then another thing, if you're able to, that smaller companies can do is an employee stock purchase program, which also provides, another incentive for those who are interested in participating to be able to gain value from the organization longer term.
And I think the other thing too, and especially if I've primarily worked in publicly traded companies, but if you're private, I think too, engaging with a company that specializes in equity compensation, they're great resources. They understand what the market is, and they can help in terms of setting up those plans and really kind of making them competitive and benchmark to peers. Those have helped. We use them for our equity compensation for some of the work that we do, but I know they also work on the private side, and it's very, very helpful to have, because then you can have a good competitive plan.
I'll just add, from a recruiting perspective, it's absolutely essential that companies have a structured, buttoned up compensation ranges and also philosophy, because it really does help level set with the candidates right away. In order to understand kind of their expectations, but also keep them somewhat realistic. I think, in the last few years with the recent law changes, we've had to kind of tiptoe around that in recruiting, and you can't really hold true to a philosophy if you don't have ranges that are competitive, but also been validated. So it just helps manage that conversation with candidates early on.
Great, thanks, Cindy. One question I have is, you guys are all just an amazing resource. Everybody comes with such an extensive background. Now, for startups who are looking to scale and grow, what are the recommendations on handling HR before they can hire a chief HR officer or a full team, like having you, Cindy, and having a recruiting team? At what point, what's that teetering point? Is it an employee count, or is it a revenue point where you make that decision of hiring senior level officers?
Yeah, it's a great question, Monica. I think it could be a little bit of both, and it goes back to where we started the conversation, which is, I think it starts with your strategy, and as you look at your strategic vision for the organization, where you need to grow, what are the resources you need in order to get there. And so some options prior to bringing on full-time headcount is using consultants or outsourcing that function. And there's a lot of great resources, whether it's a PEO like Insperity, or you're finding a consultant who's an expertise in that area. And frankly, with a small company like ours, we use consultants across a number of SME areas where we just don't have the ability to bring that in-house. So it's always a good model in terms of how you may manage it until you're at a point in which you're ready to have that as an ongoing expense for your organization.
No, that's been my experience too. And San Diego has so many very, very small life sciences companies. So there's a big consultant network. Almost everybody is, you see a lot of PEO activity, and then it seems like they get to a tipping point where the consultant, it's like, no, you need somebody full-time doing this, and then they transition. And Dianne, like you were saying, your company did that sooner than many companies did, but when you look at the amount of growth that your organization has, it makes absolutely great sense. And it would, if they would have waited till they hit the 40 or 50 employee mark, where a lot of companies, that seems to be kind of the tipping point for them, you guys would have been behind the 8 ball. I mean, you would have just been digging out of a big hole. So it's helpful that that it was smart to do that way, given the growth that you're under.
I agree. No, definitely knowing and acknowledging that growth trajectory and having that map, that roadmap set out at the very beginning with leadership is incredibly important. Now, as far as getting up and running with policies and procedures, was there any resources that you leveraged, either Amy or Dianne, that helped you really get things going, and something that you can lean on or lean towards as far as resources are concerned?
Yeah, there's a lot of great resources. We use a good employment law firm, so they have a lot of templates for just kind of the block and tackle basic policies and those kind of things. So we're not stressing out our legal department in terms of putting all of those things in place. We have a great network of HR people through an organization in Biocom. We've definitely have used those resources, and definitely, share information in the HR space so people don't have to reinvent the wheel, and kind of just put those things together. Dianne, what else have you guys done?
Yeah, well, I would say we don't use it in particular just because we've got some other resources, but a great one for small business owners, especially if you don't have an HR function in-house yet, is California Chamber. Really great for, if you've got business in California, to help make sure that the things that you're doing are compliant. They've got a ton of resources. So that's a very easy membership you can join, and a lot of online tools and resources that are extremely valuable. And then I think leveraging, like ULP and Biocom, and Amy mentioned that one thing that's really been valuable for me, and that I spend a lot of time making sure that I stay connected to, is having your network of resources. And so I have, whether it is Amy or other colleagues that I've worked with or that I do meet through networking, staying in contact and just getting advice and feedback and sharing ideas with colleagues in industry is always extremely valuable.
Dianne, I know we spoke about some protocols that you put together around a reward and recognition for employees. Would you like to share some of the things you've done?
Yeah, I mean, and I think we talked about compensation a little bit, and how, the structure and how you make sure there's benchmarking. But the other thing I would say about rewards and recognition is think beyond just the cash compensation. So the things like the recharge day or the Inspire week that we mentioned, really taking a look at, what are the time off policies, holidays that the company recognizes, and how do you look at benefits in a way that are also important and meaningful for your employee base. And so I think as long as you take a broader perspective, think creatively, what are differentiators that you'll provide that maybe larger or other organizations may not do, adds another, layer in terms of what can be a value proposition for people wanting to join. And, the other thing I think is, especially employees who are looking to grow and develop and they want those opportunities, is how are you going to foster them in your organization? So whether or not you're still virtual or you're spending some time in the office, making sure that you're taking the time to help employees build connections. So one of the things we did was what we called the Tarsus Challenge, and it was really a well-being, high-performance initiative. It was a 6-week challenge. We focused on 5 healthy habits, so everything from morning me time to meditation to journaling, drinking more water and exercise, all doable habits, but doing it on a routine basis for 6 weeks really built that as a habit. And we asked employees how they felt following the challenge, and found a huge uptake in how people just felt from a well-being standpoint, but then also how productive they were. So it was a very easy business case for why it makes sense to invest in a challenge like that. But the things that the employees loved most of was we formed teams and they got to connect with each other and really encourage each other through the challenge. And so those are really huge benefits of building out kind of unique rewards and recognition programs where people can get involved, but it also helps them feel better and more productive. Cindy, any other things that we've done that off the top that I haven't mentioned that are unique or different?
Definitely the recharge day was awesome, but we also had a company picnic where it gave people opportunity to connect outside of work. We invited family and friends. Our CEO said a few words, just kind of acknowledging all of our hard work and appreciation for what we do every day. And I know everybody just really enjoyed that. So it is really the little things, I think, that also make a big difference.
Yeah, and being able to foster those connections at smaller companies is an advantage. I've worked in large organizations with thousands of employees, and you pass by employees every day that you never even meet or say hi to, and you don't feel that connected in general. And so that is an advantage that I think all small companies should really focus on as a competitive advantage in the talent marketplace.
No, I think that's true. I think that, it's just such a differentiator because, and I do think that especially in this more remote and hybrid work, we've lost the social anchor of the office. And so it's like, how do you build those connections? And it is a huge competitive advantage for small companies because you can have a company meeting just like outside in the courtyard. It's just so cool. You can pull people together quickly and just do a lot of great things. And I think that's important. And I think it's going to be more important as we can continue in kind of this hybrid remote work environment.
God, all sorts of things just came to mind for me. I know mental health is a really big thing with employees. And I think having this level of collaboration and having employees connect with one another, whether it's something that's health or wellness related or just simply collaboration, is great. So wonderful that you all are doing that. Amy, is there any resources that you have currently through HR that you can provide employees for mental health? I know that's a big topic that comes up with burnout.
Yeah, we've done a couple things, and some of them, are your standard EAP, those kind of things. But we've really, as part of our learning and development program, which we call it the Inspired Journey. One of the components of that is called You Inspired, and that's where we really focus with our thinking about employees as a whole person, and really kind of developing that kind of mindfulness, managing with purpose, and really spending some time on their personal growth and development, and understanding that that's very personal to each person in the pathway that we take for that. So we focused on that in terms of just really kind of like Dianne was saying with mindfulness. We do fitness. We've done some fitness challenges that we do. We have a yoga instructor and a boot camp instructor that do things virtually, which has been great. So anyone in the company can participate, and it's recorded, and those aren't very expensive things. It's not expensive to do that. And it's, with Zoom, it just has made it so easy. So we've really looked at, okay, how do we focus on the whole person and help people just bring their best self to work?
That's great. Dianne, any feedback from you and resources that you have either in place or that you provide to the employees from that mental health perspective?
Yeah, Amy mentioned the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, and most health care programs, if you provide medical benefits for employees, do have them, but a lot of companies don't really talk about it, so employees don't know. So I think also just making sure employees are aware of the resources that are available to them, and similar to Amy, the piece around mindfulness and those things that, huge benefits that we saw as we rolled it out for employees. And we're going to continue to keep those efforts alive to make sure that employees have access to them. And then continuing to look at your benefits programs and enhancing where you can, where it makes sense. So for example, this year, as we rolled out our benefits, we added short-term disability as employer paid for employees. And so making sure that employees are aware of the benefits you're providing them and looking to make sure that they are very holistic, I think just always helps.
Definitely. I know it's out of sight, out of mind. If it's past open enrollment, most folks don't revisit it unless something happens, there's a life-changing event.